I'm going to read something from Robert Reich that I think everyone should listen to. It's great. I read his Substack daily, and this is from September 26th, today. And the title of it is, Why Are We So Polarized? Why is democracy in such peril? There's a typo. Friends, it's too easy to accept the conventional view that the widening polarization of our society and the decline of democracy are due to the demagogue in the Oval Office. It is really easy to blame him, isn't it? That conventional view is way too simple. Follow the money. The underlying cause is the tsunami of legal bribes flowing from huge, wealthy corporations and their oligarchic CEOs and major investors into American politics. That tsunami has grown dramatically over the last 40 years. It underlies the crisis of democracy. It is fueling polarization. Democracy and social cohesion are impossible to sustain when big money is dictating political outcomes. Over the last 4 decades, corporate political spending has more than quadrupled, adjusted for inflation. By the way, he was the labor secretary under Clinton. Labor unions no longer provide a counterweight. 40 years ago, union PACs contributed about as much as corporate PACs. In the 2024 election, corporations outspent labor by more than 3-1. According to a landmark study published in 2014 by Princeton professor Martin Gilens and Northwestern professor Benjamin Page, the preferences of the typical American have no influence at all on legislation emerging from Congress. That was 11 years ago. Gilens and Page analyzed 1,799 policy issues in detail, determining the relative influence of economic elites, business groups, mass-based interest groups, and average citizens. Their conclusion: the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. It's like taxation without representation. That's what our founders started a war over. My ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War. Gilens and Page found that lawmakers listen mainly to the policy demands of big business and wealthy individuals. No kidding. Those with the most lobbying prowess and deepest pockets to bankroll campaigns and promote their views. It's far worse now. Gilens and Page's data came from the period 1981 to 2002, before the Supreme Court opened the floodgates to big money in the Citizens United case, before super PACs, before dark money, and before the Wall Street bailout. Decades before Trump, corporations were already getting a high return on the money they invested in politics. I know, I was there. I had a front row seat. Over the last, and by the way, Clinton, I accused Clinton, after reading economics books, of being neoliberalism. Like, Clinton was essentially a Republican. He was the start of this move of the left over to the right, which has forced the right to move to crazy town. Over the last 40 years, corporate tax rates have plunged. Regulatory protections for consumers, workers, small investors, and the environment have been defanged. Antitrust has become so ineffectual that many big corporations face little or no competition. Antitrust is breaking up monopolies, which should be happening way more than it does. They seem to always just skate through. Corporations have fought off safety nets and public investments that are common in other advanced nations, such as universal health care and paid family leave, right? Because it's socialism, it's communism, so we say no to it ourselves. They've attacked labor laws, reducing the portion of private sector workers belonging to a union from a 35% 40 years ago to just over 6% now. That's why your wages are stagnant, because they broke up the labor unions. And so labor can't compete with capital, and it screws us. Reagan and Margaret Thatcher did that. They've collected hundreds of billions in federal subsidies, bailouts, loan guarantees, and sole source contracts, meaning they don't have to bid against anybody else. Corporate welfare for big pharma, big oil, big tech, big ag, Wall Street, and the largest military contractors now dwarfs welfare for people. They get all of our money. But it's a handout when we do it. We don't deserve it. I get nothing for my tax dollars, I'll tell you that much. The profits of big corporations have reached record highs, and the ratio of CEO pay in large companies to average workers has ballooned from 20 to 1 in the 1960s to nearly 300 to 1 now. That's when we had a middle class. There's a reason we don't have a middle class anymore. Most Americans, however, are going nowhere. The typical worker's wage is only a bit higher today than it was 40 years ago when adjusted for inflation. The biggest casualty has been public trust in democracy. In 1964, only 29% of voters thought government was run by a few big interests looking out for themselves. In 2013, 79% of Americans thought so. A large portion of the American public has become so frustrated and cynical about democracy that they believe the blatant lies of a self-described strongman and support a political party that no longer stands for democracy. They're just hoping Trump fixes it, which is true stupidity. No offense. Study narcissism. Capitalism is compatible with democracy only if democracy is in the driver's seat. But the absence of democracy doesn't strengthen capitalism. It fuels despotism. Ironically, the CEOs of many large American corporations are now finally confronting this reality. Despotism is bad for capitalism. Despots don't respect property rights. They don't honor the rule of law. They are arbitrary and unpredictable. All of this harms the owners of capital. Despotism also invites civil strife and conflict, which destabilize a society and an economy. My message to every CEO in America: you need democracy, but you're actively undermining it by polluting it with big money and throwing much of your support behind a tyrant whose arbitrary and capricious decisions are threatening your businesses. It's time for you to join the pro-democracy movement. This is not only about economics. Widening inequality and a weakening democracy take a toll on the moral well-being of the nation, on the implicit social contract that binds us together, on the trust and cohesion we need to accomplish anything worthwhile. In one of his first interviews on September 14th, Pope Leo XIV, history's first U.S.-born pope, talked about the causes of the deep polarization he sees in America and elsewhere. Very significant is the continuously wider gap between the income levels of the working class and the money that the wealthiest receive. Yesterday, the news that Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire in the world. What does that mean, and what's that about? If that is the only thing that has value anymore, then we're in big trouble. Trump is not the cause of the growing cynicism about democracy and the deepening polarization of our society. He's the consequence and culmination of decades of neglect. We could not have remained on the road we were on toward ever-widening inequality and ever greater political corruption. If there's a silver lining to this darkening cloud, it is that Trump may finally force us to confront this long-term crisis, which he talked about. There's a great video of Robert Reich in the 90s saying, as long as we keep having inequality, this population, the poor, the desperate, are going to be susceptible to a demagogue, to a tyrant, because they want someone to save them because their government isn't doing it. But they voted for the people who tell them that their government shouldn't, which is the truly tragic part.